a piece of paper or pen, pencil handy, please have that ready and available. We're going to do some exercises today, or you can pull up a blank Word document on your computer because I will have you do a couple of exercises as we go through this today. Hi, Sarah. Welcome. Yep, anxiety. I heard some other people share that as well. I just want to make sure everybody's in the right place. You're in the right place if any of the following resonates with you. You are experiencing some stress and some anxiety as a leader at your organization. You want to strengthen your leadership skills in this space and create a cohesive, engaged, effective team. You want to strengthen your leadership presence and get more consistent results. And most importantly, you want to lead through uncertainty with confidence. Now, I spoke to several of you ahead of this class and was asking what are some of the challenges that you're facing around uncertainty? And some of the things that you shared with me were around preparing your team, helping to support them through all the changes that are coming your way. That initial adjustment that often comes with any change, any uncertainty, it's hard for us not to react in a negative or emotional way. Keeping morale up and helping others stay focused. And then another challenge I heard as well was just balancing our own lack of clarity. We don't have all the information as leaders, we don't have all of the knowledge, but we want to create more stability for our team. So, those are just some of the challenges that people are facing in this space. Now, I'd asked you about a word. What's one word that describes uncertainty for me? And for me, the word is free falling. I feel like I can't touch the ground. It's stressful, it's anxiety inducing, it's paralyzing, absolutely some of the words that you shared with me. And I've experienced this feeling of uncertainty at a variety of times in my life. When I went from a day to day operational supervisor role to a more strategic, visionary, senior leader position, that was one of those times I wasn't sure if I had the right skills. What am I doing? Imposter syndrome. They're all going to figure me out. When I had a new leader, I had shifted executives. What is this new leader going to be like? Are they going to support me? Are they going to advocate for my team? When I had new team that I had to lead. And then the biggest one for me was probably the pandemic. And when we switched from being in the office most of the time to fully remote, navigating through that. And then a lot that's going on right now that I'm navigating through as well. Now, you'd mentioned some words to me that describe uncertainty for you, and I wrote these down. Unknown, don't know where to start. I love the Christmas analogy. I think it was Christmas lights, and they're there all the time. And there's so much of them, and I have to untangle this Christmas ball of lights. Tense, scary, apprehensive. Uncertainty, it's one of those things that's always going to happen. I've experienced it a lot in my career. It's inevitable. We're not going to be able to solve that, but we can control our response and we can influence our teams to do the same. So, in our time together, my goal is to walk you through a variety of practical frameworks, exercises you can use to shift those negative feelings that you shared about uncertainty into something more productive and more helpful, something that will move you from chaos and overwhelm to stability and peace. These are all tools I use when I led teams. It helped me move from that free falling word that I shared to feeling more grounded. And they're tools I use now with those that I coach and teach. For those that don't know me, my name is Jen Rekla. I've worked in the leadership space for almost 15 years in healthcare, public sector, and then more recently in the nonprofit space. And the majority of that time, I led the learning and development function with a very strong emphasis on leadership and team development. Now I have my own practice. I'm a leadership coach and consultant, mainly working with nonprofit senior leaders. Um, and it was my role, my most recent role in corporate in that nonprofit leadership space, that this constant uncertainty came up for me. And that's just one of many reasons why I'm bringing you this topic today. Now, that's a more formal side of me. This is more of the informal side of me. My top two values are fun and adventure. I love the outdoors, spend a lot of time with my very active children. I'm a huge fan of giraffes. They are everywhere. There's giraffe paraphernalia all over my office. I try not to take myself too seriously, and I very much believe in a strengths-based approach to work and life. So now you know a little bit more about me. And I'd mentioned one of the reasons why this topic has come up for me today. In my own experience as a leader, I dealt with it a lot. And it's coming up a lot in my conversations with other leaders. I know it's at the forefront of a lot of people's minds right now. Other reason I'm bringing this up is there's an article that I read recently through the Association for Talent Development, and they listed what are the top leadership skills people are going to need in 2025. And the number one on that list was uncertainty capabilities. As leaders, we're going to need to build our uncertainty capabilities. I want to help you do that as well. And I am all about practical action. So everything I share with you today is something that you can start working on as soon as the session is over. And we're going to work on it a little bit in the session as well. But I want to set the stage a little bit and start off with this concept of VUCA that you may or may not be familiar with. Has anyone heard of that concept of VUCA? It's an acronym, VUCA. Anyone? Okay, I'm seeing some head nods. If you know what it is, go ahead and post it in the chat. But it's a term that came out of the military, and it's really a framework that describes this fast changing, unpredictable nature of today's world. So the first piece of this is volatility. This refers to rapid, unpredictable change. Conditions can shift suddenly. There's also uncertainty in the environment, right? The future is unclear. Our past experiences, they might not predict what's next. It's complex. This really highlights how interconnected so many things are, which makes decisions harder to navigate for us. And then the last piece of this is ambiguity. This points to a lack of clarity where situations be interpreted in multiple ways, and there doesn't really seem to be a clear answer. When we operate in this environment, we have to be adaptable. We have to make decisions with incomplete information, and we have to create stability amid chaos. Many of the things you spoke about that you're challenged with right now. So, the key to really thriving in this type of environment is trying to figure out ways to counteract its effects. So I want to paint a different picture for us of what this would look like. Moving from volatility to vision. When we have a strong, clear vision, this provides stability when there's a lot of change happening. When everything feels uncertain, having a compelling mission, purpose, it's going to help anchor our decisions and keep our teams focused. Shifting from uncertainty to understanding. We do that by finding diverse perspectives, gathering more data, maintaining open communication. All of that really helps us as leaders navigate when situations are unclear, and it helps us to make more informed choices. Moving from complexity to clarity. Let's simplify information, prioritize key actions, break down challenges into more manageable steps. This can prevent ourselves and our teams from feeling overwhelmed. And then finally, agility. So this is about staying adaptable, experimenting with different solutions, and then having a willingness to pivot when we've got new information. That allows us, it allows our teams to thrive even when the path ahead isn't clear. I want this shift for you. I want us to feel more like we have vision and understanding and clarity and agility among this VUCA environment. But how do we do that? Our biggest challenge with leading through uncertainty is this: control. This is a quote that I pulled from the Let Them Theory. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with Mel Robbins' new book, The Let Them Theory. I just finished it a few weeks back, and this was one of those quotes that I read and I had to read again and again because I know it fundamentally, but to see those words put together, we all have this need to control situations, to control other people's reactions. So, doing this work, we have to recognize what we need to really embrace is that the only thing we can control is ourselves, how we show up and how we respond. The stimulus, those things that are happening to us, we can't necessarily control. We can control our response, but we need to create space between what's happening to us and how we respond. And that's the three strategies I'm going to share with you today. They help us create that space between what's happening and how we respond to get to a place of vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So let's talk about these three strategies. These are ones that you can use for yourself. These are ones that you can use to coach your teams. And they're going to tie back to how we counteract that VUCA framework or that VUCA environment that I mentioned. It's all about shifting our perspective on a situation so that we can better tackle it. So the first one I'm going to dive into is shifting from all the things that are going wrong to all the things that are going right. This is going to help us stay focused on our vision. Separating our facts from our stories. This can help us get a clearer understanding and find clarity. And then the final thing I'm going to show you is a framework for how we can communicate better during times of uncertainty, where we're communicating what we know, we're acknowledging what we don't, and we're reinforcing stability where possible. And the three C's are all about context, clarity, and confidence. So I want you to have something. Actually, I'm going to go back one page. I want you to have a challenge in mind. I'm going to have you work through, we're going to do little exercises throughout this. It's going to be for you on your own. You're not going to have to, I'm not going to put you in a breakout room. We're going to have to talk to anybody else. This is just for you. So you can write it down or you can type it out on a piece of paper. But I want you to have an uncertainty challenge in mind. So this could be maybe your company is facing some reduced funding. So priorities need to be adjusted. There's some layoffs or hiring freezes that's happening. Maybe there's some turnover. Perhaps goals or priorities are shifting, the organizational direction, strategic directions changing. There's changes in the org structure. Maybe there's some communication gaps in what leadership is sharing. The messaging is not clear, not consistent. Or it could be some of the external pressures that we're facing right now, some of the regulatory changes, political shifts, economic instability. It could be any of those. But I want you to have something specific in mind, and I want you to capture it on your paper. What is that uncertainty challenge that you're experiencing? How is it impacting your work and life? And how is it impacting your team? So I'm going to have you take 2 minutes to go ahead and type it out or write it down. Describe the situation and then describe the impact that that's having on your work, your life, and your team. Final 20 seconds. Final 20 seconds. We're going to come back to this with some exercises. So it's okay if you didn't finish everything. Okay, so hold on to that challenge again, because we're going to come back to it. And I'm going to take us back to March of 2020. I think we can all remember what that time period looked like for us. For me, I remember getting that notice. We're shifting to remote work until further notice. My husband still had to go into the office. He worked in a secure space, so he still had to go in. My kids' daycare at the time was still open, and I was spiraling. I was focused on all the things that are going wrong. I can't leave anymore. I can't go to the grocery store. I'm going to have to get things delivered. How am I going to shift all of the things that we're teaching? Because I was leading a learning and development team at the time. How are we going to shift our workshops to completely remote? We're used to doing them in person. Are people still even going to be interested in doing that right now? We're dealing with a public health emergency crisis, and we're a Medicaid company that's probably not going to be top priority right now. My husband's going to the office. Is he going to bring COVID back? My kids are going to daycare. Are they going to bring COVID back? How are my parents doing? I was just spiraling, focusing on all of the things that were going wrong in that situation. And so by the end of that first week, I realized this wasn't helping me. This wasn't serving me, and I need to do something different. I need to map out all of the things that are going wrong in this situation, what's not working, and then I also need to map out what is. What are the positives right now? What are the possibilities? What's working well for me? So that's what I'm going to have you do right now. With your uncertainty challenge, I want you to categorize all the things that are going wrong, all the things that aren't working, and then I want you to categorize the things that are going right. So if it helps to make two columns, or if you just want to do a table, maybe in your Word document, but I want you to categorize them for the next 2 minutes. What's going not so great, and then what's going well, what's going right in this situation, specifically to your uncertainty challenge. Okay, so go ahead and take 2 minutes to do that. Now, when I did this exercise, I don't know about you, but all of my energy and focus was on all the things going wrong. I don't even remember if the list was longer. It's just my effort and energy and focus was more in that space. Which was longer for you? If you want to go ahead and put in the chat. Was it all the things going wrong, all the things going right, kind of even? All the things going right. That's awesome, Amelia. Even for Jonathan. Jacqueline says going wrong. Same amount says Erica. Even Steve and Joanna. Yes, Sarah, going right, but it doesn't feel that way mentally, right? Whether one was longer or other, it's not so much the quantity, of the list, it's how much effort and energy and focus we're putting behind it. So it's typically about 80 to 90% all the things that are going wrong. And this little space that's in that drinking glass is about how much we spend on all the things going right. So then I said to myself, well, what if I shifted the amount of time, effort, and energy that I'm spending on all the things going wrong and made that really small and put more of my energy effort into all the things going right? What if this opens new possibilities? I started thinking about learning, for example, and all of the team building efforts and the workshops that we were offering in person. All of a sudden, this opened new opportunities for us to not be constrained by a room size. I don't have to limit participants to 20 to 25 people now. I can make it bigger. I can include a broader group of people. And especially for those that might be living on the outskirts of Colorado, all of a sudden, I have removed that accessibility barrier. So that's just one example of how you could shift your thinking. Looking at that list, looking back at all the things going right, what are the things we can do there that we can leverage to help us eliminate or minimize the things that are going wrong? So it starts shifting to more of a strengths-based approach. Instead of deficit thinking, we're focused on the positive deviance, the things that are going well, those bright spots. How can we continue to dig in those more so it starts to make that what's going wrong much smaller for us? So I want you to look back at that what's going right list, circle, star, mark the items that you can spend more energy on, that you can tap into, that will help you with some of the items on the what's going wrong list. So go ahead and take a few seconds to review that, highlight, circle at least one thing, star. Yes, and thanks, Paul, for sharing. Yeah, sometimes what's in the wrong category can be huge, right? It's just where we shift our focus. Even if they're small, if we can focus on those small shifts, it's going to help us feel like we're moving forward. It's going to help us feel like we have more control over the situation. So I hope you've marked those items. In addition to reframing what we focus on in times of uncertainty, it's also important for us to separate what's actually happening from the stories we tell ourselves about what we think is happening. So quick little exercise I'm going to have you do. I want you to post in the chat what you observe in this picture. What do you see? Anything that you observe or see, just go ahead and post it in the chat. Texting. He wants to know who he's texting, who's he talking to, right? An uninterested boyfriend, woman watching someone text on his phone, not paying attention. You see concern, she's curious. Yeah, absolutely. Conversation between two folks. Out of all of those things that you shared, what of those items is a fact? Can
Can you say
anyone?
that again, Jen? Sorry.
Yes,
Can you say that again?
of all of what you shared, your observations, are any of these a fact? FACT. So I would agree with you. They're all stories because that's what we do. We are naturally meaning making machines. And if we don't have all the information, we'll just make it up. We will come to our own conclusions, come to our own judgments, assumptions. And it's not necessarily the facts that drive the emotion. It's the stories we tell about what we're hearing, what we're seeing. That's what drives the emotions. And this all comes from, I don't know if you've ever heard of Crucial Conversations before. It's something I've taught for many years. It is probably the thing I quote the most on in conversations with people. And this idea of separating facts from stories, I first heard about it through Crucial Conversations. Part of that model talks about this path to action. We see and hear something, we tell ourselves a story about it, makes us feel a certain way, and we act. And that happens instantaneously. And sometimes we act in ways that aren't the most productive. So I've had many conversations recently helping people move backwards from the path to action. So we're at the point where they might feel like they're spiraling and there's anxiety and there's stress and they acted a certain way and it didn't go the way that they planned. So we take a step back and say, okay, well, how are you feeling in that situation? What emotion was driving that reaction or action? And then we take a step back and say, well, what story are you telling about that situation? And then we take a step back further and we say, okay, well, what is it that you actually saw and actually heard? And once we focus on that, we start to uncover, well, there's lots of stories that could be true in this situation, and I probably need more information. And then we build an action plan from there. But really, the first step is figuring out what are the stories that we're telling ourselves, and then what is it that we actually saw and actually heard. So I'm going to have you do this with your challenge. Again, we're going to do a category. So if you want to do a column, and you're going to categorize what are the facts of your uncertainty challenge? What are the stories you're telling yourself about it? What are the assumptions you're making, the conclusions or judgments, or the motivations or intentions you might be assigning to other people. Doesn't mean some of those stories couldn't be true, but for right now, we're just separating them. We're just categorizing them. So go ahead and take 2 minutes to do that. All right, which list was longer for you? Facts, stories, about the same? Stories the first thing caught myself and built out the facts. Uh-huh. Stories. Sarah, you're not alone. The positive are all facts, negative are mostly stories. It's where we go. We usually go to the victim, villain, or helpless story. The villain story is, we villainize other people. The victim story is, I'm a victim in this situation. I'm a martyr. And then helpless is, well, there's just nothing we can do. Those are the stories we tend to tell ourselves in these types of situations. And I'll say when I'm working with people that clients and people that I'm teaching, it's usually the stories that are longer, the stories that we're putting more energy and effort to. And once we take a step back, we're able to build more facts and then again a game plan for how do we get some more information, how do we have that conversation that we need to have with that person, or how do we look at a situation differently so that we can better, more effectively problem solve it, and it helps us diffuse our emotions in the situation. Erica, great. Didn't even bother with stories. Love it. Just wrote down the facts. So for you, I'm not going to have you do this now, but these are some questions for you to think about. Looking back at that list, and if you only focus on the facts, would that change the story? Does it change how you feel about the situation? And does it change how you might act? And again, this is a great tool you can use for yourself, but it's also one that you can help coach your teams through. If you're having a one-to-one conversation and someone's struggling or the team's struggling, you can use these questions to help them coach them through the situation. The last strategy is all about communication, which is so key during times of uncertainty. And this is a framework you can use to help organize the information that you want or need to share with others. It helps to reassure people while keeping them engaged in proactive problem solving, right? Because we want people to move to action in times of uncertainty. We don't want them to be paralyzed. So the first piece of this is context. You're providing the why, the background information. Why is this situation happening? If you can, as much as you can. Sometimes we don't even have all of the details behind this. But why this matters is because people feel more secure when they understand the bigger picture, even if the situation is challenging. And I'll tell you, especially during times of change and uncertainty, continuing to put out this why message more than once is going to be very important. So it could sound like this. This change is happening because of shifts in state funding. We're facing uncertainty due to external pressures. Here's how this ties into our long-term goals. So that's the first piece of 3Cs. The second is providing clarity. Here's what we know, acknowledge what we don't know, focus on the facts. That's where that exercise before comes in handy. Why this matters is because uncertainty, it creates anxiety. Those were words that you used when you described uncertainty. And what happens is people fill in the gaps with stories, with worst case scenarios. So if we can provide clear, concrete information, it helps to reduce that stress. Here's what we know right now about the budget impact. We don't have all the answers yet, but we do know this. These are the steps leadership is currently taking. And then the final piece about this framework is to build confidence around what we can do next. So reinforce stability where you can, mentioning this is still, we're still moving forward with our goals that we've set. Our mission and our purpose is still important. So try to ground people in that. And then what's the next steps? Outline what action you're taking, what action the team can take, even when answers are incomplete. This matters because giving people something to focus on helps them feel a sense of control. Here's what you can do right now to support your team. We are committed to keeping you informed every 2 weeks. While we wait for final decisions, let's focus on what we can influence. And I'll tell you, I used this framework recently. There was an exec that I was chatting with last month, and they were preparing for an opening speech in front of their entire organization. And they were just struggling with trying to figure out what to say. I want to make sure that I don't go off on a tangent. These are uncertain times. I don't want this to be a dark conversation. I want it to be uplifting at the end. So we use this framework to help craft that message for her. So it's just really nice way to organize things. I think the hardest piece with this is the action, figuring out what we do next. And that's where this final framework that I'm going to introduce you to and have an exercise around comes in handy. This actually comes from Covey. I used to teach 7 Habits of Highly Effective People many, many years ago when I worked in government. And this was a model that I used over and over again. It's one I continue to use today. It's one I continue to teach and coach people on using as well. It's such a simple model, which is why I like it. The idea here is what's within our circle of concern, all the things that are outside of our control, and what are the things that are within our influence, the things that we do have control over. And when we focus more on those things that are outside of our control, it narrows our ability to see what we can actually influence, where we can shift and move to action. So, again, we're just reframing, shifting our perspective to identify what those items are that are outside of our control, but focus more on the things that we can influence, the things that we can control. And so that's the final piece that I'm going to have you do with your uncertainty challenge. With your uncertainty challenge, what are the things that are outside of your control? What are the things within your influence? And then what's at least one action that you can take within that circle of influence? So again, I'm just going to give you 2 minutes to do this, something you can come back to in the future. But just to give you an idea of how the exercise work, another great one you can use to coach your teams on too. This final model, the circle of concern versus circle of influence, it's probably my favorite because it doesn't fail. Every workshop I've led with this exercise, when I've done this myself, every client I've coached through uncertainty comes up with at least one action they can take to move forward. And that's why I love the simplicity of this. So at this point, everyone should have at least one action they can take to combat the uncertainty they're experiencing. While these strategies don't immediately solve your uncertainty problem, they do help you look at the situation at a different angle. They help diffuse emotions that can clog our critical thinking skills. Using these frameworks can help you get more clarity around your challenge so you can more effectively uncover your next move, and they can help your teams do the same. And remember, you've done this before. We've all done this before. We've all navigated uncertainty. We've gotten through it. We've gotten to the other side. So think about what's worked for you in the past and pull from that to use today as well. And my final tip around navigating through this time is all about connection. Use your network. These exercises are great to do for yourselves, but they are way more effective if you can do them with somebody else, someone else that you can bounce different ideas off of, you can problem solve with. They might be able to see ways that you influence and can move to action that you don't see. So, really tap into your network, tap into your peers, tap into mentors, tap into coaches, and lean into your listening, your empathy skills. You don't and shouldn't have to do this alone. So that connection piece is my final tip for you. I'd love to learn from you, take away an action that you're going to take next. Are you going to go back and revisit some of these exercises? Use them as coaching tools for your teams. Go ahead and post in the chat. What's one action that you're going to take away when you leave this session? And just so you know that I recorded today's session as well, so you can come back to it if you missed anything or if you want to hear some of the questions that I shared with you today. So what's an action that you can take when you leave this session today? Love to hear that. Or a takeaway if you want to share a takeaway. Network with a purpose. Love it. Remaining positive, encouraging, but also realistic. Yes. Yes. This is not about ignoring the reality of our situation. It's just where we put our effort and energy. Absolutely. Others, any action that you're going to take. Focus on what you know and what you can do. Yes, absolutely. Mindset, it's a perspective shift. Don't speculate, use the power of positive thinking. Absolutely. Follow up to receive actionable feedback from the people I serve. Oh my gosh, yes, Jacqueline. Feedback, that's a whole other session. There's so much that can benefit there. So keep those actions in. If there's other takeaways or actions that you want to share, the more you put them out in the universe, the more likely that you'll actually follow through on them. So we know navigating leadership in VUCA is challenging, but we can shift how we respond to it. We can counteract that environment, that volatile, uncertain environment around us, and lead with vision and understanding, clarity, and agility. Our focus today was on leading through uncertainty and really building those uncertainty capabilities. But as we know, that's just one of many challenges that we have to navigate as leaders. When I first started leading teams, it was exciting, but also overwhelming. And I could not have gotten through it alone. I leaned on mentors, books, classes, coaches, workshops. And on top of that, I was leading a learning and development team. So my job literally was to study and teach and coach on leadership best practices, which I think really helped accelerate my growth in that space as well. And I'm guessing for most of you, you might not have that same benefit. And that's why I built the strategic leadership coaching program. So if this is an opportunity where you want to dive deep into something more, like this was just a taste of what we could potentially do together. I knew how hard it was when I led teams. I wanted to make it more seamless for other leaders. And I know that this session today might have helped you to find more clarity, but I think we all know that leadership is so much more than that. And what really helped me when I was leading, there's really three key things. One of those was navigating my workload effectively so that I had the time and energy to focus on really what truly matters, to focus on my own growth, to focus on growing the team and getting better results. And then I also knew that I needed to build confidence. I needed to build leadership presence so that I could have more space to really tap into my strengths and the capabilities that I needed, like the uncertainty skills that we've been building. And then it's all about the team. This is the big ultimate goal, right? We want to develop high performing teams. They're cohesive, they're collaborative, they're consistently getting the results that we're looking for. And wrapping it all up, there's got to be a way that we can sustain success. So that's the way that I designed this 6-month program, was to build off of these main focus areas that I watched myself succeed with, and I've watched many others that I've taught and coached succeed with as well. So this program is for you if you are a senior leader struggling with delivering consistent results. You need to get out of the weeds and focus on the big picture. You want that cohesive, engaged, and effective team. You want to navigate uncertainty more effectively, more confidently, build that leadership presence, and not work nights and weekends. This last piece is the most important for me because I talk to too many leaders who are burnt out from working all hours of the day. And I want you to see more time back in your schedule. I mean, think about what it would look like to have more time to focus on what will drive results, what will make the most significant impact on your customer or client base. Not working those nights and weekends. You have a vision, you have a purpose in this situation. You have a team of high performers that are connected. They are exceeding the goals that you set out for them. They are collaborative. You're not seeing the conflict that you've seen on other teams before. And what this looks like, I'd mentioned it's a 6-month engagement. We connect every month, twice a month. There are tools, templates, assessments along the way. If this sounds like what you need, this reclaimed time and energy, increased leadership presence and confidence, and having a team full of high performers, The QR code will take you to some more information about what that would look like. And there's space to just book a call, an exploration call, maybe see if it would make sense for us to work together. I have a few spots available and I want to see you the results. That's why I'm doing this. I know what it feels like to get out of bed every day and be excited about going to work on Monday. Leading a team that is engaged and connected and innovative. And when you have to have those tough conversations, you feel more confident and prepared to have them. And I want that for you. If this is something that you're interested in, I am offering a discount. It's just for the next few days. This discount's going to expire after March 31st. Normally I charge $5,000 for the 6-month engagement, but I'm offering that $1,000 discount. And again, if this is something that you want to explore, there are exploration calls, no obligation with those calls. It's just a chance to talk about your goals, to talk about your challenges, and see if it makes sense to work together, if a partnership makes sense. And that's again, if you're interested in diving into something deeper. If you're not already connected with me, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. My email address is up there, my website. I will send up a follow-up email that has the recording of this as well later this afternoon so that you can look back on it. I know leading a team is not easy. It can feel lonely, it can feel frustrating, but it also can be very magical and rewarding. And I want that for you. You don't have to figure this out alone. I'm here to help you accelerate your growth and support you in every way that I possibly can. And with that, I wanted to leave some time for questions if anyone has that. So I'll stop sharing my slides and just open the floor to any questions that anyone has. Feel free to post them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and share out loud.
Hi, Jen. This is Rola. Sorry, I'm not
Hi,
able to
Rola.
hear you. Thank you. This was very helpful. Great content. Got a lot of value out of it. About the program, is this the first cohort?
So it's not a cohort, it's a one-to-one engagement.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a personalized, tailored experience because everyone's leadership situation is a little bit different. So it's not a cohort program.
Okay, I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
And so 6 months, how often is it per month in terms of engagement?
Yeah, so it's every 2 weeks. It's 13 sessions total. I capped on that extra session for creating a sustainability plan. I don't want people to have to engage with me forever. I want us to engage, really accelerate people's growth in that 6-month period. And then you walk away with steps that you can continue to take to build from what we create.
And should I expect homeworks in between sessions or I'm just trying to understand the workload.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's where the catered piece comes into play. I don't want to give people too much homework because I don't love homework. And I know, especially with the client base that I tend to work with, time is of the essence. I don't have time to do homework. So typically, what I do with clients is we come up with a couple of action items to experiment with in between our sessions together. So it's not going to be, I need to fill out this 4 or 5 page document. It's, we're going to try time blocking. So block 30 minutes on your calendar every Monday morning, and you're just going to organize your week. You're going to map out what you really want to focus on and then time block it on your calendar. That would be an example of an action item that might a person might walk away with.
Makes sense. Yeah, more applying the learnings. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, Rola, thanks for asking.
So I guess I'm thinking aloud a little bit. So with the circle of concern, so those are things that you cannot change or
Yes, you can't control, like there's a new law or new policy that our organization is taking on, or I'm getting a new leader, or a team member is leaving. Or it could be weather, all of those things that we might have some influence over, right? If somebody's leaving, I might have some influence on keeping them or not. But I need to focus on what that would look like and then what my next step would be. So COVID, right? I can't control a pandemic that's happening around me. I can only control my response to it. Whether I keep my kids away from daycare and keep them at home or not, whether I encourage my husband to change his job to something remote to keep our families safe, right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking how much you can influence those things that you can't change. So I was trying to put that together. But
And that's why having somebody else to bounce off things, because when we're stuck in it, we're so stuck in the weeds that sometimes we can't see what's right in front of our nose. And so even Beth, for you, chatting with somebody at work to say, can you help me with this? They might rattle off 3 or 4 things you hadn't even thought of. Oh, yeah, you're right. I do have influence on that.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, I will stay on the line for the next few minutes in case anyone has any follow-up questions. Thank you all for participating and engaging today, and I'll send out that recording later this afternoon.